Hi there, folks. Today we're looking at plotting points in the coordinate plane. We're going to start to get into this idea of graphing things. And really, the coordinate plane, is made up of a lot of different pieces. I have the quadrants and that kind of stuff labeled. Some of that is not nearly as important as other pieces. The most important thing is just understanding the concept of where we plot points and how we plot points within the context of this grid that we have. All right. So remember, ordered pairs are expressed in the form, there's parentheses, and we have two numbers of the comma in between. That first number is the x value, and the second number is the y value. And so really probably the most important thing on here is understanding which one is the x axis and which one is the y axis. So the y axis is this one that goes up and down here. I've got it labeled there, y axis in red, and it's that kind of thicker black line that goes right down through the middle, up and down. The x axis is the one that runs horizontally, left and right here. And you see it off to the side labeled in blue. It's that thicker line right down in the middle there that goes left to right. All right. So that's the x-axis and the y-axis. And really, if you look at the center of where those things meet, that's the origin. That's like the ordered pair 0, 0. All right. And this idea that as we count in certain directions, we're counting in the positive or negative direction. For the x-axis, as we count to the right, that's the positive direction. As we count to the left, that's the negative direction. That's something we're already used to from just graphing things on number lines, all right? That x-axis is basically a number line like we've always had number lines. But now we add this y-axis, and it kind of acts like a number line that's going up and down. And so we just need to understand that when we count up, it's the positive direction. We count down, it's the negative direction, okay? And so as we look at an ordered pair, it tells us how far to count left and right for that first value. And then it tells us how far to count up and down for that second value. And that's where we plot our point. Okay. So it's basically like we're kind of figuring out where this would be on both of these number lines. Okay. For example, if we look at something like this guy, it just says to identify each ordered pair. And so I'm just going to go in alphabetical order here with A. And so we just have to look at this thing and say, okay, always start from the origin, always start from the center right here, which is 0, 0. And think about how you would have to count left and right or up and down to get to A. It looks like we would have to count back 1, 2, 3, 4 units. All right, so that would be a -4 for the X value because we counted to the left. And then from there, we'd have to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So that's a +4 for the Y value. Okay. So again, you just think about which way you have to count, and that'll tell you positive or negative, and then you stick that with the value. So left 4 units and up 4 units, that's located at the ordered pair -4, 4. Okay. If we look at the B value, again, think about how you would have to count to get there. It looks like from the middle, from the 0, 0, I have to go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. So right 4 is a +4. And then it's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. It's up 6 blocks. So that's a +6. Okay. And so again, just understanding which direction counts as positive, which direction counts as negative. The first value is always the left and right, is always the X. The second value is always the Y, the up and down. The C value here looks like I go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units. So that's a +7. But then I don't have to count up or down at all, which means it stays where it is. That means I move 0 blocks, okay? So because I don't move at all, it's 0, so that's the ordered pair 7, 0. D is to the right 1, 2, 3 units. That's a +3. And then it's down 2 units, so that's a -2. All right. F is our next one. Let me bring that up here. So F, it looks like I don't have to move left to right. I just have to count down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's down 5 units. Well, that's the Y. The X, I didn't have to move left and right at all. So that's a 0. Okay. Again, this is measuring how far I have to go. If I don't move, that's a distance of 0. And then the E value, or point E rather, it looks like I have to go to the left, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the left. So that's a -6. and then it's down 1, 2, 3, 4 units. That's a -4. Okay, that's how we plot these values in this XY coordinate system. It's just two number lines working together. And so for this one, again, the first value is X and the second value is Y. That's probably the most common mistake is students get their X and the Y mixed up, okay? X, then Y. Just like alphabetical order, X comes before Y. In an ordered pair, X comes before Y, okay? Unless you don't know the alphabet, I recommend Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is a great way to remember that. But anyway, so this one, 5, -4, so that's to the right 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then -4 is down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I plot a point, and I can just put the letter A next to it to label it. Okay. The next one, to the right 1, because it's a positive 1. And then up 6 because of the positive 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's my B value. Okay, and that's my point B. The next one, -3, so I count to the left 3. So from the center, 1, 2, 3. And then a positive 2 is up 2, 1, 2. I plot that, that's my C. And then this one, -2, 0, so that's left 2, 1, 2. But then up and down, I don't move because it's a 0, so that's right there. So that's D. And so again, we just have to remember first value is X, second value is Y, and then understand which way do I move, which way is positive, which way is negative, okay? So now let's apply this to something a little bit more complicated. We're going to start to graph lines here. And so the first thing we're going to mention here is domain and range. Domain is like the set of input values. It's the X values, okay? It's what we're plugging in. And then the Y values are like what we're getting out from our equation. Typically, when we write equations, they're always Y equals and then something with X in it, all right? X is what we plug in. Y is what we get out. All right. So when we talk about domain and range, domain is just what we plug in, and Y, the range is just the values that we get after we plug those things in. Okay. And the idea here is we're going to start to graph and look for patterns in this thing. So like if I look at something like this guy, it says graph the function y equals 2x minus 1 with domain. And again, by saying domain, we're just saying plug this in. Okay. And here's how we typically do that. We're going to do it in terms of an XY chart. We're going to make like a little chart of these. And so the domain, it says, hey, plug a -2 in for X, then a -1, then a 0, then a 1, then a 2. All right. And essentially, all that's saying is by saying the domain is -2, it's saying, hey, plug a -2 in for X. By labeling it as domain, it's labeling it as an X value, it's labeling it as an input, something we plug in. And then I just simplify. That's a -4 minus 1. And remember, anytime you're subtracting, you change it to adding the opposite. So that's -4 plus -1 is a -5. So then back over here to my XY chart, I write the -5 down, and that's it. And here's the thing, we don't necessarily have to write all of those out, all right? We can if we need to, but I'm just going to reuse this. Oh, I can keep the -1. I'm still using the same function, all right, the same y equals, but now I'm plugging the next value in, saying, hey, plug a -1 in, all right? So 2 times -1 is a -2 minus 1. And again, chain subtraction to adding the opposite. -2 plus -1 is a -3. So that's my next value. And now once again, I plug in the next one. So I'm just working my way through the domain values. And what they're giving me is the range. See, the range value is -5. The next range value is a -3. When I plug the 0 in, that's 0 minus 1, which is a -1. And then I plug the next value in. All right, so I'm just plugging one in at a time. 2 times 1 is a 2, minus 1, that's an easy one, that's a 1. And then the last one they give me is a 2. 2 times 2 is a 4, minus 1 is a 3. Okay? But again, that's domain and range. Domain is telling me what to plug in. The range is just what I get out. All right? It's just a fancy way of saying, hey, plug this thing in and see what you get out. All right? But now I want to graph this thing. And each of these from an XY chart perspective, each of these is really an ordered pair. When we see something in an XY chart, it's showing me the X and the Y. That's the same thing as saying the ordered pair -2, -5. You know, this guy is the same thing as saying the ordered pair -1, -3. This is the same thing as saying the ordered pair, 0, -1, okay? And so we start to interpret it that way. We don't have to write all these as ordered pairs. Hopefully you can read it as an ordered pair right from the XY chart. I'll finish writing them out in this example. And the next example, we'll go right from the XY chart to see if we're okay just graphing those right from the XY chart. If you need to write them as ordered pairs, that's okay. But now let's plot these things. Ready? -2, that's left 2. -5 is down 5. So there's my first point. And then -1, that's left 1. -3, down 3. The next one, 0, so I don't go left and right. -1, I go down 1. The next one, +1 is to the right 1. +1 for y is up 1. The next one, +2, +3. And so as I look at this, I'm looking at the graph and I want to look for patterns. It looks like the graph has a pattern to it. As I look from one point to the next point, hopefully you can look at it and say, hey, there's a pattern here. To get from this point to this point, it was up 2 and then over 1. To get from this point to the next point, it was up 2 and then over 1. The next point, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. So visually, I could make a prediction. It says right here, can you predict any other ordered pairs based on the graph? So maybe you'd look at it and say, hey, there's another ordered pair right here, right? Just based on the pattern. There's another one right here based on the pattern. There's another one right here based on the pattern, all right? And if you identify those ordered pairs, right here, the first one I graphed was 3, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it was the ordered pair 3, 5. That would be one of the ordered pairs. That would be part of my domain and my range there. 3 would be part of the domain and 5 would be part of the range. And if I had included that in my XY chart, see, the only reason this graph stopped is because I didn't graph all of the domain values. I didn't graph every possible point because we don't want to. We're getting a sample of these and then looking for patterns. We'd also have the ordered pair that looks like 4, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 would be another ordered pair we have. Or going the other way, it would be -3, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -7. All right. But I can use the graph to see that there's a pattern in terms of those points, and that allows me to get more values here. Okay. And so the idea here is we can start connecting these with a line. I don't need the XY chart to come up with more ordered pairs. I could simply look at the pattern from the graph. Okay. Same thing here. Graph the function y equals -1/2 x plus 3 with domain of -4, -2, 0, 2, 4. So this time it told me what to plug in. So I'm going to do it in an XY chart. So I'm going to plug them in. So -4, -2, 0, 2, and 4. And once again, I'm going to start the same way. I'm going to have this guy, and I'm just going to plug in those values. And remember, always use parentheses to plug stuff in. So I'm going to start with the -4. Just a reminder, a fraction bar is a division sign. So times -1/2, that's just saying, hey, divide by -2. That's what a fraction is. It's a division sign. It's saying divide by -2. And so when you do this, divided by -2 is a +2 plus 3 is a 5. And now I move on to the next one. It says to plug in a -2. Again, times the -1/2, that's just saying divide by -2, right? So that's a +1 plus 3. Hey, that's a 4. The next one, if I plug in the 0 this time, anything times 0 is 0, so that just says 0 plus 3, which is 3. The next one, I'm going to plug a 2 in. Again, times -1/2, that's just divided by -2. That's what a fraction bar means. So that would give me a -1 plus 3, which is a +2. And then the last one that they asked me to plug in was the 4. Again, this is like a division sign, that fraction bar. That's what a fraction is. That's a -2 plus 3. That's a +1. Okay? And now let's graph this thing. Again, these are ordered pairs. I'm not going to write them as ordered pairs this time, but hopefully you can see that first one is the ordered pair -4, 5. So ready? -4 is left 4, up 5. There's the point. The next one, left 2, up 4, There's the point. The next one, left and right 0, up 3. The next one, right 2, up 2. The next one, right 4, up 1. And we can see that there's a pattern in terms of the graph. Visually, you can look at this and say, I can make predictions. Like, I bet there's going to be another point right here. And we're just counting from one point to the next. Like, to get from this point to the next point, it was down 1 and then over 2. And then the same thing, that's the pattern repeated, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, down. So I can predict that I'm going to have a point here. Or maybe I could predict that I'm going to have another point right here. Okay? And so if I label those ordered pairs, let's see. The one that's off to the left is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a -6 for my x. And then it's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's -6, 6. Okay? And if you were to plug that -6 into that equation, you'll get a 6 out. That's what this ordered pair is telling me, but I didn't even have to plug it in. I can tell just by the pattern from the graph. The next one is to the right 6. So that's a positive 6. And then up or down, it doesn't move, so that's a 0. So again, I'm making predictions about what other ordered pairs would be on here based on the pattern that I see. Okay, it's just a little bit of pattern recognition as we visually look at this thing. And again, I can draw a line through there, and there's actually a bunch of fractions in between that would actually give me values too. Keep in mind, I could plug decimals and fractions into this thing. That's what that line is showing me. It's showing me the decimals and the fractions that I would get in between the values that I've chosen. Okay, so again, XY coordinate system, the ordered pair is always X followed by Y. It's just two number lines, all right? Left is negative for X, right is positive for X, up is positive for Y, down is negative for Y. So plotting those ordered pairs. And then domain and range, domain is just what you plug in, Y is what you get out. But then we're plotting those points to start to get an idea for the patterns that emerge, all right? And we're already getting an idea of how to graph lines at this point, okay?